This is Dharma Drops with your host, Rebecca Warfield. This podcast is a little bit about yoga, a little bit about life, and a little bit about whatever. And just as a warning, this podcast is unscripted, so that means I might regret a few things that I say. But hey, maybe I'll say some pretty awesome stuff too. Remember, these are musings, not truths. Buckle up, giddy up, because here we go. Hello, it's me, your host of Dharma Drops podcast, Rebecca Warfield, and this is your Dharma mini drop episode for June 17th, 2020. I often try to figure out how I want to start these episodes because it's just me and I don't really know what else to say, to get things going. So I just keep saying hi. So, hi, how are you? I'm so glad to be here with you today. For those of you just tuning in for the first time, the Wednesday mini episodes are short segments, 15 to 20 minutes. Today's going to be a little bit longer because I got something special planned. And generally, they are with just me, but I actually have a guest for today's mini drop episode. But the mini drops come out every Wednesday, and then every other Friday is a full length episode with a guest. Now, the mini drops, they vary. Sometimes there's meditation, sometimes it's just me, sometimes there's a guest, but they're more bite-sized bits of Dharma Drops. But because I do have a special mini drop episode with the guest today, all the way from Portugal, one of my favorite places in the world to visit and eat. Side note, if you go to Portugal anytime soon, well, probably not soon because it's the pandemic, all that stuff. But if you ever go to Portugal, I'm just saying, eat everything, drink everything, because it is all amazing. So anyway, that's just my little bit of travel advice for you. But no matter where you are or where you're going today, we do have an Ayurvedic episode with an Ayurveda expert from Portugal who will be giving us a little bit of advice and insight about how to prepare for summer, since the summer solstice is this week on June 20th. So I'm going to get right into the announcement so you can get into that episode because I try to honor your time for the mini drops. First and most importantly, I would like to share with you a cool event that you can check out with Kia Williams. And this is not through Dharma Drops, so I'll have all the links for you in the show notes. But Kia Williams, I actually met her last year. She was the teacher for my bar training that I did because I teach bar at UNCW some semesters. So she was the instructor and she was awesome. And so we've been following each other on social media ever since. And in fact, we tried to record a Dharma Drops podcast episode when she was in town, but we couldn't get our schedules to align. But in any case, Kia is hosting a Juneteenth yoga celebration. This is a 60-minute yoga flow with Kia on Friday, June 19th. And there are two options at 9 a.m. and or 6 p.m. Central Time. So I know a lot of you on the East Coast or elsewhere. So just make note that it's 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. Central Time. And 100% of the donations for the class will go toward the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund. So you can follow Kia on Instagram at kiawilliams.fitness for more updates and information, but I'll have all the links for you in the show notes. We've been trying actually to record an episode to promote her event. I'm not sure if we'll be able to get it done in time just because June 19th is happening really, really quickly. And I'm about to pack up all my podcasting equipment because we're moving. So I don't know if we'll be able to get that stuff aligned, but I really wanted just to let you know about the Juneteenth yoga celebration with Kia Williams this Friday, June 19th at 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. Central Time. And all the links for that are in the show notes. I hope to see you there. I've already donated and I'll be taking probably the 9 a.m. Central Time class. So maybe we can practice together. That'd be a lot of fun. Now in the Dharma Drops biz, there is still a 40% off sale in the shop. It's the moving sale because if you haven't heard, the Dharma Drops headquarters is moving to a new home. It'll still be in Wilmington, North Carolina. We're moving across town, but I don't feel like moving all that stuff. So it's 40% off and I will send it to you and then I don't have to carry it into my new house. And then last but not least, in terms of things happening in the shop, next week I will be posting new jewelry from Rachel Kinsey Designs. Rachel Kinsey is an amazing artist and community member here in Wilmington, and I'm really excited to offer her jewelry. It's beautiful. Many of it is made with metal, but she also has this really cool, like, she does all this naturally dyed material that she incorporates into her metal jewelry. It's super beautiful. So I'm really excited to have it, and I'm really excited to support other local artists and share their work with the Dharma Drops audience around the globe. So I just got the order in today. They should be in the shop next week. So keep your eyes peeled. I hate that saying, just so you know, because it just has like the worst like peeled grape imagery. I can't stand it, but do keep your eyes peeled for Rachel's jewelry on the Dharma Drops shop, and that will be at dharmadropspodcast.com. Last but not least, before we get into this summer solstice Ayurvedic episode, just a reminder that if you are going out in public, it's a really kind and easy thing to do to wear a mask. Wearing a mask when you go out in public helps protect others, and it helps protect you. It's a simple thing that we can all do to keep each other healthy and safe, and you can like make them cool with like cool fabrics, and all sorts of stuff like that. So I maybe just my little public service announcement, but as a yoga community, we are here to support and uplift the health and well-being of all people and all beings. And a really easy thing that we can do right now to support each other is to simply just put on a mask when we go in public. So that's my public service announcement for this week. And I'm going to go ahead and get you into this week's mini drop that is focusing on how to prepare for summer Ayurvedically. All right, guys, I'll see you next time. Enjoy the episode. Listeners, it's me, your host of Dharma Drops podcast, and I am here with my new friend who we were just talking about how I'm probably going to butcher her name because I don't have great linguistic articulation, but I'm here with my new friend, Irina Adriaensen from Portugal. She is an Ayurveda and yoga teacher, and she is here today to share her knowledge with us about Ayurveda. How is it going?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name with my very American.
It wasn't too bad, to be honest. So,
Okay.
thank
Okay,
you for
good.
making the effort.
Yeah, good. So, we are just going to hang out and chat today a little bit about the summer solstice and preparing Ayurvedically for the summer solstice.
Mm.
But before we get into that, can you share with the Dharma Drops audience a little bit about how you arrived to in particular, the Ayurveda practice? Because we talk a lot about Ayurveda on Dharma Drops, but I think you're the first true Ayurvedic expert. So I'd love to know how you got here.
Yeah, okay. Well, it all started with yoga. And I was practicing for about 8 years before I took yoga teacher training. And coincidentally, in that teacher training, there was an introduction to Ayurveda. So that was included. And I had always been interested in the relationship between food and health. And in that introduction, it just clicked for me. And I was like, whoa, how come I've never heard of this before? And then, I wanted to go on with that. So I came back to India and then started studying a little bit more because, it just really clicked. So I wanted to know everything about it. But like yoga, it's such a vast topic. So I already know I'm going to be a student forever. But yeah, it's all super interesting, and it's the one science that explains so many different things in a really logical way, and that really appealed to my pitta mind. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Just to backtrack a little bit. So one thing that we didn't even really talk about is that you are in Portugal, which is one of my favorite countries in the world that I've been to. And just going back to, you said the relationship between food and health. And now I don't know if everything I ate in Portugal was that healthy, but just want everyone to know that hands down, Portugal has the best food consistently I've ever had anywhere in the world. It's so good.
Yeah, definitely in Lisbon there is, yeah.
But I don't know. So, do you find it easy to eat an Ayurvedic diet in Portugal? Because it's hard. I mean, I shouldn't say it's hard in the United States, but the United States has a pretty, especially since I live in the southern United States, it's maybe hard to like go out to eat, for example, and find restaurants where you can really honor an Ayurvedic diet. Is that something you're able to do in Portugal?
No, it's almost impossible. I'm a vegetarian, and there is a big meat culture and barbecue culture here.
Mm.
And I mean, in the cities, the bigger cities like Lisbon and Porto, there's definitely a lot of vegan and vegetarian restaurants, but even those don't really take into account like proper food combining and other things that Ayurveda teaches. So I end up cooking most of my own meals, and then when I do go out for a meal, I don't mind. I know that it's like a treat or something like that, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it too. And of course, since we're in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, I don't know how things are going in Portugal, but the restaurants here in North Carolina just opened. So I haven't been out to eat in almost 3 months, and I'm not really that interested in going out to eat at all, just because the things I can make at home, they do honor my body's needs. And if I am trying to eat more Ayurvedically inclined, so to speak, it's just a little easier in general.
Mhm.
So, with that said, we are headed into summer. So, I'd love for you to share with the Dharma Drops audience what's happening to us according to Ayurveda as we transition into summer.
Okay. Well, it's very important that you say transition because, of course, it doesn't mean like on the 21st of June that suddenly, the energy flips and we go from spring kapha energy into the pitta summer energy. So it's a really gradual process that is dependent on where you live. Here in Portugal, where I live, we've had like summer weather for the past week, so I already feel the pitta rising. But countries that may be further up north, it could be at least another month or 6 weeks before they start getting to that same kind of energy. So it's really noticing the conditions around you, like what's the weather like, is it really humid, is it dry, what's the temperature like? And as the temperature rises, it's important to start moving with your food as well. So start changing and making some changes. There will be different produce in the markets as well, so it's really a gradual process.
Sure. And so, I think maybe even to backtrack again, I think a lot of the Dharma Drops listeners have definitely learned a lot about Ayurveda over the years or, just know a lot about it in general. But can you share a little bit? You use the language pitta. What does that mean?
All right. So in Ayurveda, there are three, we call them doshas, mind body types, and they're based on the five great elements. And they are used to describe everything. So we use it to describe the mind body, but also the seasons, the energies around us, everything that is, part of the manifestation of our world. And all the doshas have qualities, and pitta, which is the season that we're entering now, typically has qualities like it's hot and like penetrating, and it takes away your energy. So while the winter is built for rest and building up the body, in the summer it's usually a time where historically we work harder, maybe on the land, or we work harder, so we're asking a lot of our body. And to keep in balance and to counter that heat of our work, we need to you know work with a few practices that Ayurveda teaches to balance that heat.
I like what you said that we're asking a lot of our bodies because, I live at the beach in North Carolina and it's a tourist town. And summertime here, it doesn't feel like work, right? Because everyone's surfing and everyone's paddleboarding and they're running on the
Mhm.
beach and stuff. So it doesn't seem like when we talk about pitta as intense and a lot of work, it doesn't necessarily feel like that at face
Yeah.
value, for example. But actually, we are asking a ton of our bodies. I can just speak for Wilmington, for example, just being in this type of community. That is summertime is always when I have the most injuries because I'm doing the most, right? I'm like running around, I'm doing things outside, I'm like playing, at the beach and stuff. And I think that's a really great way of phrasing it that we're asking a lot of our
Mhm.
bodies at this time.
Yeah, one of the other qualities of pitta is the intensity, and also, the pitta is really focused. So we can be so much focused on one thing, and it could be work or something else, but we can be so focused that we actually forget everything else around us. So we forget to take care of our body, or we forget to look at other people. There's that single-mindedness and intensity that is very typical in pitta that is also increasing when the summer season starts.
Mhm. So what happens then? Because I have heard in the past that if you live in a humid climate, so we actually talked about this before we started recording for those of you listening. Where I live, it is so humid in the summertime here. I mean, literally, we live on a swamp, and the ocean water is our main element here. And so humid. I have heard that in climates that are very humid, you actually have to pacify kapha to deal with the humidity first. Have you heard that before?
It really depends. Pitta is based on the two elements, water and fire. And usually we say, to make it short, like pitta is the fire element, but it also has water. And it's these two contrasting that gives, the steam. So even if there is humidity, there is an element of pitta there.
Mm.
I mean, of course, it really depends. Like if you're talking about a desert, yeah, it's very clear to, okay, that's going to be pitta.
Right.
It's not because it's humid that it can't be pitta, because kapha may be humid, but one of the properties of kapha is also it's cold. So that's why we say, that spring is kapha season, because in a lot of places the spring will be really damp and cold, maybe snowy. So it's really looking at all the different characteristics of this season, and then being really mindful of what is happening in your body as well. Because if you are, for instance, if you are a kapha dominant person and summer is coming, you may start feeling more balanced because there is some heat building in your body, and that is countering the coldness of that kapha inside you. But if you are like me, I'm a pitta kapha, and
Me too.
and in the summer I can already feel the pitta building. So it's very likely that I get out of balance in the summer because the external conditions exacerbate what my nature already is. So there's a lot of fire in me, and then also my environment is very fiery. So there is, if I'm not going to balance the pitta around me or in my body, then I can get out of balance with all pitta type imbalances.
I'm a Pitta Kappa too. And, before I found the yoga practice, and especially before I, started learning about Ayurveda, I never really understood why I felt so bad in the summertime. And like everyone I know, especially living at the beach, people love summertime, and everyone's like these little beach babies and running around and having fun in the sun and going, doing all these things out in the heat and loving their lives. And I'm home like, really like kind of depressed actually because I just felt so bad and so
Mhm.
tired. so worn out. And it
Mhm.
wasn't until I learned more about Ayurveda that I started to understand. I was like, oh, this is why I feel so bad all the time. Because I remember, like, for example, I was in, maybe I was in Costa Rica. I can't remember. I was traveling somewhere and it was summertime and I like had a rash all over my skin. I'm like, why I get these rashes in the summer? Like, what is the deal? And everyone else is just like lounging on the beach having fun. You
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
So it was actually like really liberating in a lot of ways to learn about this because then I found these manageable tools through Ayurveda that really do help me feel better, like for sure. And I haven't had a heat rash in years now,
Mhm.
So with that said, I'd love to know what some practices you do to keep pitta in balance as we get into the summer season.
Mm. So Pitta, like I said before, we really are focused and have high energy and we want to do stuff. But the one thing that is keeping me balanced is to slow down, actually, which is super hard for me to do.
Me too, girl.
But to really be mindful, how do you feel your day? Also, slow down your exercise. Like, in the spring, it's really good to ramp things up and to drive away that stagnant caffeine energy from winter and spring. But in the summer, we're already putting our body through a lot with our work. And if we then also like have a really intense exercise regime, it's just gonna, provide more imbalance. So in the summer, I choose like slow yoga practices, walks, swimming, instead of running. And also, in Portugal, it's impossible to run in the summer. I think you die.
You
Or you have
know,
to get up at 5 a.m. or something.
I know. And also too, where I live in Wilmington, North Carolina is flat. We're at the ocean and we're at sea level here. When I would say in Porto, for example, there's some big hills you'd have to run
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, I live in the countryside and it's really like trail running here. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna change my routine soon. Yeah, and then yeah, also food wise, there is other things coming into season now. I'm starting to use different spices, using different foods that are more cooling. I probably should lay off the coffee as well, but I have some
God, me too, but I can't. It's just so good.
yeah, I know. But yeah, coffee is really, Pitta doesn't really need that cake to get going,
Mm.
if we're really being honest, but we just like it because, yeah, we like it. Um, um, other things that are really important for Pittas is to consider others. So, we're so single-minded and so goal-focused, and we get there as well, but sometimes it's good to slow down a little bit, look around us, see what's happening, especially like we're in a whole new world right now. So
Yeah.
I think it's really important to not be so, like, Pitta can be really ego-centered. It's all about getting things done, about goals, doing, and being is sometimes forgotten. So for Pitta, taking the time to reflect it's quite challenging. If you're a Pitta, maybe you can relate. Like, I don't know, like, I usually ask clients, like, when is the last time that you were, just in a hammock or on the sofa, staring at the ceiling? And then either the answer is never.
It's hard. It's hard to
Yeah.
do that. Sometimes, for example, yesterday, I just, for whatever reason, didn't feel like doing anything and that wasn't
Yeah.
hard. But especially, I don't know, on like midsummer days, it's really hard to just sit down and do nothing. And the great irony of that is I feel like there's all these images in the world of us just relaxing in the summertime. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like having a good time and doing nothing. But I feel like in the summertime, I could probably lose my mind a little bit with work
Mm.
because it's in the summertime. You hit the nail on the head. It's when I set goals. It's when I do my hardest work. And to think about sitting in a hammock and just doing nothing, I can do that for about 3 or 4 minutes before like the next idea pops up and I have to go do it. You know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And but this is exactly it, because when you do take the time to rest and relax, you get these brilliant ideas that are so typical for Pitta. But if you're always working and always doing, it's really hard to stay in that flow and to get these really good ideas. So, the summertime is a time for work, but also we shouldn't forget that there's also, there's a time for work and there's a time for play and there's a time for rest, and to really honor those rhythms of the body is super important to not get out of balance.
Yeah, and I like what you said about a time for work, play, and rest because I think sometimes the rest and the play get a little bit mixed up. Like if I'm not working, then I'm going to go out and play. And if I'm not playing, then I'm going to go back to work. And I think that's really important to remember that there is this third component to that of true rest. And in fact, I just published a mini episode that came out today about the importance of resting and how it's sort of exactly what you said. When we allow ourselves to rest, that's when actually all the good stuff comes. That's when we get the good ideas and also the balanced energy to do all the work and play that we want to do.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah,
Hmm.
in Pitta there is really the danger, and I personally have had that experience a few times, that that fire that Pitta has, that is going to burn out, and it's super hard to come back from a burnout. And the risk is real because we have this focus, and we can ignore all the signals just with the strength of our mind. Pitta has this really this intensity, this real focused mind, like I'm going to get to my goal. But it can also have repercussions on the body, especially if you are not attuned to your body and if you're not listening to what your body is trying to tell you, like, hey, I need some rest, or I need more sleep, or I need time to play. And yeah, I think maybe things are changing now with with all the changes that are happening in the world, but it for a long time it's been like a status symbol, like, hey, how are you? Oh, I'm super busy.
Yeah,
It's like
yes.
a badge of honor. And for Pitta, it's that's like, it's really bad.
Yeah, there is this weird thing that like to be busy means you're important or you have worth or something. And it is interesting what you said though about the pandemic because we're in this sort of weird place in our lives right now where maybe people are doing less. But then I think about people like me who, I mean, I embody pitta like every way for the most part, and even though there's been this great time for rest, basically what I've done is made myself more work. I'm like, oh, well, if I can't actually go out to work, let me just do more work at home, And so I can just see this sort of, just really the fire building through this, and hopefully I'll get my act together here because we're headed into like prime time pitta dosha where I live right now. And every year, the same thing happens. I'm emotionally and physically burnt out by the end of summer. I used to not fully understand why, but every year in August, I ended up with the back injury.
Mhm.
It never failed. And it was the same
Yeah.
injury, it was a nerve problem on my left side. And then I came to realize it's because I've just been working too damn hard all summer long in the heat and my body's inflamed and I'm not taking good care of myself. And by summer's end, the fire has burned too long and I re injured myself.
Yeah, exactly.
It never fails.
Yeah.
So hopefully it won't happen this year.
Yeah, Pitta is also very stubborn, so there is always this, this expectation. Oh, maybe this year will be different. But of course, if you're not doing things differently, then you will probably end up with exactly the same result.
Yeah. So one thing too, because I know like When we talk about Ayurveda, we're often talking about the way that we live our lives and like literally spend our time. But
Mm.
also, I think one thing that interests a lot of people about Ayurveda is the food component. So I'm
Mhm.
curious to know what sort of things should we be eating during the transition to summer to help us get ready for summertime?
So again, it depends a little bit where you live.
Hmm.
But one of the things that it's a generalization, but that is good for pitta is like raw foods. But it doesn't mean that oh, it's summer, it's pitta time, I'm a pitta, I can eat raw foods all the time. Because again, if you eat too much of that, you're gonna get your vata out of balance. So it's a good time to have those salads and really enjoy them, but maybe enjoy them at the middle of the day when your digestion is strongest. And if you're at a point in your life where your digestion is not so strong, it's better to maybe lay off the salads. If your digestion is really good, then a salad can be really nice and refreshing.
Hmm.
Um, and then there are different foods that come into season and that have cooling properties, like lots of fruits and vegetables that have a lot of water, like cucumbers and melons, coconut, and then spices like mint and cilantro are also really cooling. So we're looking for foods that are more cooling. But again, like we don't want to eat all cooling foods, because then one of the other doshas is gonna get out of balance. So it's really a fine line, and it's trial and error with your body, your constitution, where you live, what your lifestyle is. So there's a lot of components which you know it's it's really hard to generalize, because if I say, oh, salads are really good in the summer for pittas, but it may not be true for you.
Hmm.
So
Which actually, it's not true for me, interestingly. So salads do hurt my stomach, for example. So one of the things that I've been experimenting with the last few summers is eating lightly cooked greens like spinach and kale. So that way still they have that like that light quality to them, but they're cooked to help to I can't say it, to digest a little bit more easily.
Yeah, exactly. And it's important to continue eating all the six tastes. But if you're really feeling a pitta imbalance, maybe eat a little bit more sweet and astringent and bitter foods. Um, but yeah, like I said, it really should be, like, how are you feeling, what feels good for your body. And also one day it can be different to another day. So yeah, it's what makes it really complicated, and why a lot of people are confused about Ayurveda, because oh, I'm this dosha, and I'm doing everything that the textbooks say I have to do for my dosha, but it's not working and I don't feel better. And yeah, there may be other reasons why it's not working for you. So
Yeah, and I think that's a really important part of the conversation. So I actually teach yoga classes that are Ayurvedic based here in North Carolina. And one of the things that I remind my students all the time is that when we're talking about Ayurveda, we are seeking balance. And I think harmony is the word that's used a lot in Ayurveda, but that comes moment by moment. And like we might be feeling really kapha in the morning and then pitta in the afternoon, or maybe today I feel like a little pitta imbalance, but tomorrow I don't. And so I think that's a really important part of this conversation, is that it is a day to day, I can't say it, moment by moment study of our own bodies and lives.
yeah, so as as women, and the environment that we live in, there are the seasons, there are our lifestyle and working environment and home environment, and also there is our monthly cycle, and then there's also the daily cycle, where the different energies rise and drop. So there are so many elements that define which dosha going to feel more is going to feel stronger, or more active. And it's creating that awareness, um, like what is going on and why is this? Is it because I had some pitta provoking foods that, today I get a rash, or I am a little bit irritable, or, it's looking at things like this that, all the details that is going to give us information. It becomes second nature after a while, but in the beginning it can be super confusing.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that I do think is cool is that it does become sort of intuitive in time. But there is like a trial and error method to this. You're going to try some things, see how you feel, be
Mhm.
really in tune with how you feel, and then try some other things, and see how it goes. And I can say, just from my own personal experience, thinking about my own life and sort of the way I eat and the decisions that I make from an Ayurvedic perspective, eventually that gets a lot easier to figure out. And
Mhm.
suddenly I just kind of know, like, oh man, I'm way off balance with my pitta today, or oh man, I'm way off balance with my kapha dosha today. And it gets a lot easier to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. It takes time, and it may be a good idea to take a course or see a practitioner if you're feeling a little bit lost. Um, but don't be afraid to try out things. It's not because a textbook says that this thing should work that it will work for you. And the best thing you can do is to record, like start a journal or something, a food journal, activity journal, and really start tracking. What did you eat? What activities did you do? How did you feel the next day? And in this way, you are bringing awareness to your whole life, basically.
Hmm. So another thing too, because I know you're a yoga teacher, and Ayurveda and yoga are parallel systems of study and science. So you touched on this a little bit already, but in terms of your yoga practice, what are some things that you do in the yoga practice to help balance the pitta dosha?
Mm. Well, my yoga practice started. I was a gym member. I had a gym membership through work, and one day I stumbled into an Ashtanga yoga class, and I will never forget that
Yeah.
class.
I'm sure you won't.
And of course, I couldn't do it. And I was like, what is this? I need to be able to do this. So I started really practicing hard. And I was, in an office job. So I was sitting a lot. And, it didn't take me very long to develop a shoulder injury.
Yeah.
So after some rest, I start again. Same thing happened. Some rest, healing, same thing happened. And it almost put me off of yoga because every time I feel like I am progressing, I get injured. And this was my pitta. Like, I want to be able to do this, and this style, the ashtanga and the vinyasa, felt really, I was so exhausted at the end of it that all the rest that came after felt so good, but I was really hurting my body with this practice.
Hmm.
And then I did yoga teacher training, and that was a hatha training. And I really liked that. And then by coincidence, I ended up in another ashram in India, where they taught Tantra yoga, which is a really meditative meditative style of yoga with really long holds, a lot of integration between asanas. So you are really practicing, and you feel your muscles because you're holding postures for several minutes. Not unlike Yin, but it's a little bit different.
Hmm.
And that was so good for my body. And so when I practice, I usually practice this or Yin yoga. I also really like Yin, to find that calmness, to really feel into my body, and to relax, basically. Um,
Yeah, one of the things that I do in my yoga practice in the summertime is I try to just take it a little easier. So I did not start an Ashtanga, but I have practiced Ashtanga, and it was
Mm.
also an Ashtanga that I ended up with nerve pain in my left leg again, because I think that's the story for a lot of Ashtanga practitioners is injury,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But in the summertime, often what I try to do is just not have so much intensity in my yoga practice. I can get really serious really fast on my yoga mat. Like, well, let me see if I can just hold this handstand a little bit longer. Like,
Mhm.
let me see if I can just do this a little bit better, So
Yeah.
I try to chill out with that, and not so much like not hold postures as long, but not be so intense with it and just lighten up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, pitta is already intense, and that's why, any calming practice, I mean, not just yoga, but like I think things like gardening or really calming activities like, I don't know, drawing or um, mandala coloring or things like that can be really soothing for pitta.
Mm.
And it's not what pitta is drawn to initially. But I think what starts happening is, when you do have those kind of practices and you do start doing these slower activities, that you start feeling a little bit more balanced and you're like, oh, hey, that actually feels really good.
Yeah. For sure. And that's the cool thing about Ayurveda too, is I think like how much empowerment comes from this. Like, oh, actually, I have the tools and the knowledge to be able to feel better in my life, which feel for me is pretty exciting because up until that point, I just like I didn't know how to feel better. And then I spent, 3+ months of the year feeling really terrible. And so when I found these tools that can help bring some balance that I don't need anyone else to help me with, really, that was a really liberating experience.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it gives you the sovereignty over your body, like, okay, I'm in this state at the moment and I am the one who got myself there, but also I am the one who can get, herself out of there. So, and that's super empowering because
Mhm.
we're human beings, we're never going to be perfect all the time. It's impossible. And also it's not something to strive for. But when you fall off the wagon for a bit too long and you start feeling imbalanced, then it's just a realization like, oh, okay, I'm not feeling so great anymore. Let me look at what's been happening, and then you know exactly what you need to do to start getting back on the path to balance. And that's super exciting that you have this practical knowledge. um, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you, are there any resources out there that you would recommend for folks listening if they wanted to learn more about Ayurvedic practices?
Um, there are lots of resources. I have a blog post where I talk about the
Oh,
best
cool.
Ayurveda resources. So maybe that's something, I don't know if you do show notes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
I'll put
something.
them in the show notes for everybody.
Yeah, yeah, cool. So that's like books and podcasts and blogs that I love. Um, yeah, and yeah, you can start there, depending on what your preferred way of learning is. You can always go see a practitioner, if you have any doubts about what your dosha is or how you can get to balance. It's like a one-time investment, and then you have this knowledge um, that can help you like improve your life and take your health into your own hands. um, Let me think about other resources.
Well, I also think that what you said about, meeting with someone who's an expert, that's a really good piece of advice. I mean, there's lots of knowledge that we can discover on our own, but for those of you listening, you might know this or maybe not, but Ayurveda is about as old as yoga. And so when we're talking about a study, we're talking about something that can consume your entire life. And there are professionals out there who have vast knowledge of Ayurveda and that can really help you sort of bring these things together in the ways that can serve you best because it is a lot to know.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And, somebody else will even, a family member can sometimes see things that you don't see as clearly, but a professional has that, the knowledge and also the experience, and also maybe the distance, is not so involved in the things that you do, so has a really clear eye on what may be balancing and unbalancing to you.
I'm just kind of laughing to myself because I feel like as a pitta, if someone gave me that feedback, I think my initial response would be like, "Nuh-uh," like
Exactly.
you're not right about that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the ego-centeredness of the pita, to But I mean, it's why pitas are often really successful. They are often right, but accepting help is a really important lesson that a lot of pitas have to learn.
Over and over again.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
learned this lesson before.
Yeah. I'm here again. Okay, so how did we get here? One more time.
Yeah. So something else I meant to ask you before when we were talking about food, and I forgot actually. So we'll go back to that. So in at the New Year and sometimes it's spring, I have done kitchery cleanses, and of course an Ayurvedic cleanse. Is a kitchery cleanse something that would be good for summertime?
I wouldn't recommend it.
Mm,
Um, but again, it really depends.
okay.
If your body is already feeling weak, then then a cleanse may be too much. But on the other hand, if your digestion is really low and you're not getting the nutrients from your food because your digestion is really low, then a cleanse can be really beneficial. So, if you are considering a cleanse, I would really speak to a professional,
Mm.
because like everything, it can be either medicine or it can be poison, and it really depends, on the person. It depends on your environment, and it depends on a lot of things. So, this is the answer Ayurveda gives to a lot of questions. It's always it depends, and it can be pretty frustrating because
I feel
it's not
that's like
cut.
anything like yoga and Ayurveda, that's almost always the answer. Like, well, it kind of depends on
Exactly.
the person. And like, I feel like sometimes students are like, no, I need the answer. But the answer really is, it depends.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, if you're considering it, then yeah, make sure that you inform yourself, that you're really clear, on what the state of your body and your mind is, and why you would do a cleanse like that. Typically, cleanses are more the around the spring to summer season, and from summer to autumn, especially around October, November, traditionally. Um, yeah, but yeah, again, it depends.
Yeah. I feel like that might be the title of this episode. It depends.
Great title.
So this has been really helpful information. I know we're kind of joking about like it depends, but I mean that actually is true. And I think that because it does depend, that it gives everyone sort of the power to look at their own lives, because it really depends on what's happening in your life. And so I think this is good information for the Dharma Drops audience, is to really just look at your life, the things that you're eating, the things that you're doing, and take note of how it makes you feel.
Exactly. I
Hmm.
couldn't have said it better.
Well, thank you. Oh my gosh. So, is there anything else that you would like to share about Ayurvedic practices for summer?
Not that I think of at the moment.
Yeah, no problem. So, what I'll do is in the show notes for those of you listening, I will add in the blog post so you can check that out, and a few other resources that were mentioned on this episode. And I'd like for you too to share with the Dharma Drops audience, how can they find you if they want more information about you or your services? Do you offer Ayurvedic consulting?
Yeah, I do. And you can find more information on my website. That's www.foreversunday.org.
I like that name, Forever Sunday. That's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, there's a story to that name, but
Different episode.
yeah.
So also too, I know you are in Portugal. So do you work virtually with clients across the world?
I do. Yeah.
Awesome. So, friends, you can find all of this information on dharmadropspodcast.com under the show notes. And I have really enjoyed recording this episode today because I really like the Ayurvedic practice. I like to think about the way that I can live my life through this framework. And so I really appreciate you being here and sharing your knowledge with us today.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And Dharma Drops listeners, you can always find all the Dharma Drop shenanigans at dharmadropspodcast.com and on Instagram at Dharma Drops Podcast. And before we go, I feel like if I'm talking with someone in Portugal, I feel like the only thing I know to say in Portuguese is cerveja. and, and vino, that's all I know how to say is beer and wine. So I can say thank you too. So I don't know what that says about me necessarily, but that's the extent of my Portuguese.
Yeah, it's very important. I think you will get really far with that in Portugal.
Look, I did get very far in Portugal knowing how to say beer and wine. So. All right, friends, thanks so much for listening. And until we meet again next time, bye.
Bye.